Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Rubin Bai. And good morning, Rufai.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
You're not wearing red.
I'm not wearing red. I'm not wearing red. And this is not PSG blue. Nobody should get it confused. This is not PSG blue at all. People will call me a soul loser. We are not.
This looks like a new hairstyle.
Thank you. This has actually been the hairstyle for about a week now, Dr. Rubin. I'm glad you finally noticed. At long last. All right, let me yes, sir. It's not Paris here. Please, in case you didn't know us, we would have led the World Brief this morning with Arsenal making it into the Champions League final, but it didn't happen. I can't.
You'll later blame us for talking too much. Please, let's start.
Anyway.
Mikel Arteta says Arsenal is the best team in the Champions League competition this season. And he's very proud. He's very proud of the team. And what they have achieved.
Thank God. All righty. Black smoke means that there is no pope yet, as day one of the papal conclave ended without a leader of the Catholic Church being elected. After a lengthy wait, black smoke emerged from the Sistine Chapel's chimney on Wednesday, meaning the cardinals have not been able to choose a new pontiff. Crowds were gathered in their tens of thousands in St. Peter's Square for the first vote of the conclave. Now, the results of which took more than 3 hours to announce. Now, this is 1 hour longer than it took for smoke to be seen after the first vote in 2013's conclave that picked the late Pope Francis. Now, because of the secrecy of the process, experts have pointed out that we might never know what caused yesterday's delay, and we definitely won't know until after the conclave concludes. But there have been some unconfirmed reports that a language barrier was actually the reason. A sermon was given in Latin, but some cardinals, especially the newer ones, they don't actually understand Latin or Italian fluently, so perhaps that could have been the reason for the delay. That being said, the Catholic conclave now enters its second day with more rounds of voting, 2 rounds this morning and another 2 this evening. And voting, of course, will continue until one cardinal has secured a majority of 2/3, which this time around means the vote of 89 cardinals. Alrighty. Could the US be growing frustrated with Russia? Well, perhaps. US Vice President J.D. Vance has said that Russia is asking for too much in its negotiations with Ukraine in the latest sign of growing frustration from Washington with ceasefire talks to end the war between the two countries. Now, he was speaking at a security conference of senior military and diplomatic leaders in Washington, D.C., and Vance said that the White House is focused on getting the two sides to hold direct talks and is ready to walk away if certain benchmarks are not reached. Meanwhile, this period of unagreed ceasefire called for by Vladimir Putin began this morning, Thursday morning, as the Russian president seeks cover for Victory Day events. Now, Ukraine has dismissed his move as a game designed to protect Putin's parade rather than an actual genuine step towards peace. And that's because he wants to protect the foreign leaders that are there. So China's Xi Jinping will be visiting Russian capital for the Victory Day celebrations. Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, has offered a 30-day ceasefire as suggested in US brokers' talk, but so far the Kremlin has refused. And then finally, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has been addressing the nation following an overnight missile attack by the Indian Air Force. Now, the death toll from India's strikes in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir have risen to 31. Pakistan's army spokesman said 57 others were injured from the strikes. Now, among the dead are several children. Pakistani officials have said that Indian missiles struck a mosque in the city of Bahawalpur in Punjab, which is Pakistan's most populous province, as well as Muridke in Punjab and Kotli in Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. Now, the United States, United Kingdom, China, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates all have called for a swift de-escalation of the conflict. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the UK was engaging urgently with both countries, encouraging dialogue, de-escalation, and the protection of civilians. Up to your thoughts.
Real quickly, so let's go back to 1947. When Ali Jinnah said we'll have a new nation called Pakistan, and they were moving them out of what used to be the Indian subcontinent then. There was a dispute over this princely patch of land, which is princely region, which were owned by initial princes out of old Indian origin, which is, Kashmir and Jammu area. There's been a dispute on that. They finally resolved to say, okay, Pakistan take a portion of that land, about 35%, India take 55%. Then China too have had their own wars around that region, so they have like 10% of that portion of that land. So what has been happening, they've been having crises here and there. Allegation of Pakistani terrorists attacking people. The recent one was about a hotel incident that happened. Some tourists were attacked and all of that. Then the reprisal has started. India pounding Pakistan, about 4 airports shut down because of operational issues, and this has been going on. So there's a big, intense war scenario going on across all areas. World leaders say they should de-escalate. I think to a large extent, both parties should be able to come to the table and talk about this. Because see, they will all co-own Kashmir. There will always be actions in Kashmir. Prior to this time, Pakistan has said they had no hand in what happened. You know, there will always be groups that will use the situation on ground as a pretext to be able to foment their own violence. So India and Pakistan, which used to be one nation put together before, now fighting over this and allowing this destroy the fabric of what they share, definitely is going to cause a lot of destruction.
It's very sad.
I know India too has not been favoring in the past, because don't forget, historically, when a part of Pakistan wanted to break out to become Bangladesh, Indians also support the likes of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, right there, when they had their war in independence in the 70s. But both parts must come together because they are conjoined together. As regards the Pope, let's not deceive ourselves. It's going to go on for a couple of days. Because what the last Pope
Think it lasts into the weekend?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't say. But because what Pope Francis had done is he had brought in a lot of cardinals from underserved areas. So that's why it just talked about language barriers. Some of them can't even speak Latin. Aren't you shocked that in the modern era of the Catholic Church, you have some cardinals that can't even understand Latin or Italian?
So, yes.
Reportedly so.
Yes.
So you're going to have a lot of that going on, and most of them are just knowing each other for the first time. So you're definitely going to have a lot going. So it's going to be an interesting conclave, but probably when the white smoke comes out, we'll say we have a Pope. Yep. But as regards Russia, I think I said it here many times, that it was going to be problematic to solve the problem. It was the highest level of delusion for Donald Trump to think he could bring Putin to peace. And I still keep referring to that 5,000-word article. You can go back historically to the 5,000-word article where Putin was pretty much saying that there are cultural ties that binds Ukraine. And it still says Ukraine as under Russia. And if you go back to the time of, even from the time of Peter the Great to the times of, Ivan the Terrible and all of that, you will see that Russia has always tried to mop up Ukraine to its side, Kiev to its side. And the Tsars did a very good job at that. Up to when you had Stalin coming and the Soviet Union. But after the breaking of the Soviet Union, everybody did fall apart. When the Berlin Wall fell in the late 80s, Putin was a KGB officer in Germany, and it was said that he was very livid. And he said, at some point, I'm going to reunify the region. The grand plan of Putin is to bring back some form of that Soviet Union. That's why he's going for Crimea. He's taking the Donbass region. He's looking at South Ossetia and Abkhazia. A couple of wars he's fought in the past. And Trump should never forget that American president, the best you can do is 8 years. How long has Putin been there?
It's been there.
So he will try as much as possible to do his thing. So whatever Trump was thinking, now he's saying he wants to pull out of it. But you said you could fix it. Go ahead and fix it.
Before he even became president, he said that he fixed it with one phone call.
Go ahead and fix it. It's not that easy.
It's not that easy at all. And, Vladimir Putin, in his nature, is taking this moment to do another massive PR fait accompli, if I may call it that, which is, of course, we know the significance of Victory Day, which symbolizes the defeat of Nazi Germany. And they do these elaborate parades and marches every year. But this year is significant. And he's got, I was watching videos of the Chinese military already doing their drills earlier in the week. And several world leaders are converging. So it's such a complex situation negotiating with somebody who consistently constantly reminds you that there's people on my side. And I think that's what gives him the boldness. Of course, imagine him going to declare a 3-day ceasefire just because it was last week that Zelensky threatened and said he cannot guarantee that the world leaders who are going to be converged in Moscow will be safe. Of course, he has the onus to ensure that that would be the ultimate disgrace, not to mention global calamity of the highest order, but disgrace is probably at the top of his list. I don't think it's an altruistic motive that he has. However, I also want to highlight the fact that although there's, I'm still waiting for a final list, but the most recent list that I saw of world leaders attending had Burkina Faso's leader, Ibrahim Traoré, on that list. And of course, there's been a lot of conversation around him, especially over the past 2 weeks, where we saw various protests taking place around the world in support of him. And people are standing up to say, he must be protected. He stands for Pan-Africanism. And there was the controversy. I read the interview of his bodyguard who detailed how he had been paid, or they attempted to pay him to do an assassination, and all of this happening around this leader. And Russia has stood firm with him. We know that Russia is also going to help him with armaments and so forth. So I think for us, from a Pan-Africanist perspective, it's important to see how we can always keep a brotherly relations with our neighbors, even if we don't agree with their regimes or how their regimes operate. Because right now we see a lot of hostility from some incumbent African governments against this man and the, shall I say, the alleged agenda that he stands for. So it's a complex time. And for me, I just feel that if Ibrahim Traoré's people love him, then he should be protected at all costs.
Great.
Okay, very quickly. I will now go back to the geography of Kashmir. I dealt with that the first time you brought the topic. I think that what is important is how the international community can quickly widen and de-escalate tensions. Now, both countries involved, India and Pakistan, there have been reports of the Indian part of Kashmir where there was an attack on tourists. Now 31 persons have been killed in Kashmir's, Pakistan's side of Kashmir. And the Prime Minister of Pakistan is saying, well, they will avenge for every of the 26 lives that have been lost. There have been drone attacks in Lahore, and they said, they've been able to put that down. An hydro power plant belonging to Pakistan in Muzaffarad, was also destroyed, and Pakistan is not happy with that. Why do I say de-escalation of tensions and that the international community should not fold its arms? India is the 4th largest military power in the world. Pakistan is the 12th, strongest military power in the world. Between both countries, they have nuclear power.
Yes.
So an all-out war between those countries will have the implications for global peace. We've been talking about Sudan. We've been talking about Ukraine and Russia. We've been talking about war on other fronts. The UN must wade in. They must prevent a full outbreak of hostilities, because these are 2 nuclear powers. Now, what has happened? Pakistan has stopped flights, suspended flights. All sporting events involving India, whether it's cricket or football, have been suspended. It's just for the world to step in and ensure peace. But of course, if there is war in that region, China will benefit, Iran will benefit, America will be at a disadvantage. And maybe that's why President Trump is saying that, look, there's been enough tit for tat. Can we have peace? Peace is what we should focus on.
Agreed.
As for the U.S., J.D. Vance saying they will walk away from the negotiations. This is not the first time he will say so. In fact, this is about the 4th time. Now, and my suspicion is the United States has already gotten what it wants from that conflict. Ukraine has now, from Memorandum of Understanding, now signed an agreement, a deal with the United States to control its natural resources. They say it's 50-50.
Some, yes, 50.
They say it's 50-50, but I don't believe, because America, has an upper hand in the deal. Okay. Now, J.D. Vance says Russia is asking for too many concessions and that they will walk away. If they walk away, it will appear to be convenient for them. And that's the problem about hypocrisy in diplomacy. This is also an indication of America first. But will it happen? Well, we'll see. Finally, Pope. I'd like to comment on the Pope. Now, it took 2 days for the conclave to elect Pope Francis and also Pope Benedict the Sixth, right? Yeah, Pope Benedict. Yeah.
The Pope before Pope Francis?
Yes, Pope Benedict. 2 days. Now, the longest time we have had was between 1268 and 1271, when it took the conclave 1,006 days to elect a pope. I don't know whether this will be as long as that. If they follow the pattern of Pope Francis and Pope Benedict, the 133 cardinals may well give us the news in the next 2 days. But the more challenging thing is a challenge before the church. The ideological issues that they have to determine.
Definitely.
There's a conflict between the progressives and the conservatives. Would the next pope be a progressive or a conservative? 2, issues about the role of women in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
3, issues about child abuse. These may be some of the issues that the conclave, although they've been secluded from external communication, will have to determine. So the major issue will be the future of the church. And when the next pope shows up and is announced, we'll be interested in whether he's a progressive or a conservative.
We'll see. Well, thank you all for your thoughts. Let's move on to newspaper headlines. As ever, we begin with this day. And former President Goodluck Jonathan says the attempt to create a one-party state in Nigeria is detrimental to the country. Also, at long last, Nigeria's Senate has passed 2 tax reform bills. They are the Nigeria Revenue Service Bill and the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill. Now, the Red Chamber also kept VAT at 7.5%. Now, to the top of the front page, we also see that the U.S. National Transport Safety Board has released its final report on the helicopter crash that killed Herbert Wigwe, his wife Doreen, son Chizzy, and friend Abimbola Ogunbanjo. And it has found the primary cause of the crash was the pilot's decision to continue the flight under visual flight rules. Essentially, the pilot became spatially disoriented and lost control of the aircraft. The NTSB also found that the helicopter company failed to ensure its pilots followed essential safety procedures, including the proper logging of maintenance discrepancies. Now, former President Goodluck Jonathan's concerns are also repeated on the headline of today's Daily Trust this morning. Let's move on to the New Telegraph. Reports of the House of Representatives have commenced investigation into how the 200 billion naira loan from the central bank for the National Mass Metering Program by 11 discos was spent, essentially. To the Vanguard, and there's a host of stories on their front page, including Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia saying that there's a plot to remove him from office. That's in reference to the protests that we saw earlier this week in Abuja, calling for the National Assembly to take control of the state's assembly as the security situation in Benue continues to worsen. Meanwhile, the Daily Independent leads with the federal government saying that this global trade war is pushing Nigeria into a more agrarian existence where it will grow what it eats. And we've heard that many, many times before. That's as it signs a $158 million financing agreement for a value chain program in agriculture. Now, to the United Kingdom very quickly, and we do have the Metro, and it is reporting that Liam Payne, the former One Direction boy band star who fell to his death from a hotel in Argentina back in October, is leaving or has left his £24 million fortune to his 8-year-old son, Bear. I believe that's the child he shares with Charlotte Tweedy. Not Cheryl Tweedy, do you remember also from A Girl Band? Essentially, that is someone who's different from his girlfriend who was with at the time he died. He was actually set to marry that lady before his death, and according to these reports, she may well be left out of any type of financial entitlement. And then finally, the Daily Telegraph of the United Kingdom does look at the £4 million daily cost of housing migrants in the country.
I know there's no time. I just want to say this quickly. Please, we must never hear of any state of emergency in Benue or in Zamfara? Because they started to mute that idea again. Say some people are saying the National Assembly should take over since they have problems in the National Assembly in those states. We must never hear, let Governor Alia be, let Governor Dauda be.
All right, on that note, Adefemi, we try again tomorrow.
Tomorrow is
always another day, right? Thank you so much.